Hi.
Hi.
Hey.
Are we live? Hi.
Yes. Hi. I'm Kristen.
I'm Zoe.
And I'm Eric.
We're members of the Learning Resources team, or the Scratch Learning Resources team, and we work with a bunch of other people in the Lifelong Kindergarten group at the MIT Media Lab, making learning resources and other awesome things related to Scratch. And today we're hosting this webinar to kind of chat about some learning resources.
Super excited to see people from Miami and Los Angeles.
Yeah, so please introduce yourselves as you log in, join the chat. So for the first half of this webinar, the three of us are going to share some learning resources with you. And then for the second half of the webinar, we're going to actually take your questions. So
that is a good segue to my section. So how can you ask these questions, these burning questions that you have? We have a slide that we should pull up that's going to have some information on how it is you can ask these questions. And so while we're pulling that up, you're watching. One way to do this is you're watching now on YouTube Live. There is a chat section on the right side of the screen.
Mm-hmm.
Feel free to drop your questions there. You can start dropping questions throughout any point of the hour. If you're more into Twitter, if that's more your speed, you can ask your questions using the hashtag Scratch and Practice. And then if you love Google Forms, if you're like, man, Google Forms is the best, you can drop your questions in a Google form. That is at bit.ly/your-scratch-questions. Again, that's bit.ly/your-scratch-questions. So there's 3 ways in which you can be asking these questions throughout the hours. We look forward to getting all those questions.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
And should we tell people where they can get these slides?
Oh. Yes.
Maybe we'll put that in the link in the chat.
Yeah, someone can post a link in the chat, but there's also a PDF version of these slides for you to look at, and there are links in it that link to the resources we'll be chatting about. Cool. So I'll dive in and kind of give you guys a brief overview of some of the resources that are available on the Scratch website. But this is just an overview. We'll dive into these things as we go. And also, I'll just get going. Okay, so one of the main resources you'll find on the website are the tutorials. You'll also find coding cards that are available digitally and in print. And there are also educator guides, which are guides that help you run a 1-hour workshop in around the kind of tutorials for Scratch. And I also want to chat a little bit about the design philosophy of how all of our learning resources are created. So it's really important to us to create things that have a low floor, which means that it's easy to get started creating things and doing things you're passionate about right away. The other thing we think a lot about is creating things with wide walls so that you can explore a variety of interests. So no matter what you're interested in, you can explore ideas and things that you're passionate about and create a variety of different kinds of projects. High ceiling means that there's a lot of room for you to grow, so you can keep building your skills and exploring new concepts, both through coding, but also through creating your own projects. I don't know if either of you have anything to add to that.
Yeah.
No, I think, one thing is with the low floor, when we are designing Scratch or thinking about Scratch 3.0, there is sort of this interest of like, oh, let's add this like new kind of flashy feature. But then it's always like, well, what about the low floor? What about someone that's new? How do we make sure that that experience is still like preserved and is welcoming? And so it's been fun to sort of, in designing resources and Scratch, really the program, to think about all 3 of these in parallel. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So I'm going to talk first about a little bit about the tutorials. So I'm actually going to go to the Scratch website. And if I click Create, the navigation bar at the top, you'll see Changes. And we have this awesome Tutorials tab. You'll also see that if I'm not logged into Scratch, it starts out with a tutorial already open. And this is actually our Getting Started tutorial. So it kind of shows you some inspiration and gets you started using Scratch right away. Our tutorials all open in this format, and so it might start with a video, and then it goes into these cards that kind of show you which blocks to use and how to do things like add a sprite, that sort of thing. You'll also see that when you get to the end of a tutorial deck of cards, you have options for 2 other tutorials. And this kind of brings up an interesting point about the way the tutorials are designed. They're actually created to be modular so that you could start out maybe creating an animation, and that animation could, depending on what tutorial you pick or what your interests are, it could turn into a story, or it could turn into a game. You can really kind of follow your passion. You can also get to the tutorials library by clicking See More, or I can go up to the top of the editor and click here where it says tutorials. So here's the library. And you can see that we have a variety of different kinds of things. You can get back to that getting started tutorial here. We have classics like Animate a Name. We have a brand new tutorial called Imagine If. And if I click any one of these, I'll do create a story. It opens up in that same window. The other cool thing that's kind of new in Scratch is this shrink feature, which kind of allows you to move this around and have more room for coding without actually having to close it out. And then you can expand it again and keep kind of going through the tutorial.
And for those just joining now, it's Kristen, Zoe, and Eric from the Scratch team chatting about learning resources.
Yeah, and keep sending your questions either on Twitter using hashtag Scratch and Practice, on YouTube Live, or the Google form, which is bit.ly/your-scratch-questions.
Cool. So I'll go back to here if you want, and we can.
Can I mention one thing about the tutorials?
Cool. Yeah.
Since we have a room full of educators, we heard your feedback, and the tutorials are no longer hosted on YouTube. They're hosted on Wistia, which is hosted on the Scratch website. So there's a higher chance that you'll be able to access them in your classroom. And so thank you, everyone, for giving us that feedback. And no offense to YouTube, who's hosting YouTube Live.
Yes.
But we know that is one thing that folks had asked, and so excited that that's implemented.
Right. Yeah, we know that a lot of educators don't have access to YouTube in their schools.
Yeah.
So hopefully this change has improved things for you all.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to jump a little bit into the ideas page on Scratch. So yeah, that's just here. It's scratch.mit.edu/ideas, or also if you just go to Scratch, right up here, just click on that one. This has just links to a lot of fun, activities to do with students, activities to do with kids in Scratch. So here it's just got a link to the whole tutorials library that Kristen just showed. This will link you right to the Getting Started tutorial, great for beginning users. Here we have all of the materials around several of our activities grouped together. So if you click on any one, like Animate a Name, you've got this button which will take you to the video tutorial for Animate a Name. You've also got this link which will take you to the coding cards for Animate a Name, which is just an alternative way of going through the tutorial. I hear we already have some coding card users in the chat, which is awesome. Woo! Makes me really happy. Yeah, so for those of you who don't know the coding cards, they'll each have a theme, which is kind of getting at that wide walls idea of ours. That some people will want to do a virtual pet, other people will want to make a Pong game. This one is Animate Your Name, and it'll be a set of cards. Each card has something that you can do in Scratch on the front, and then on the back it'll give you the code to do it. So this one is just for clicking the letter to make it change color. It gives you the simple code to do that. Get it is chugging. Okay, we got it. The Educator guide is to accompany the coding cards, and it's just tips for, as Kristen touched on before, tips for running a workshop around this with your students. So
That's a lot.
A lot of stuff.
Natalie says the broadcast stopped for her.
Oh.
Because of we didn't plug into the.
It's going live for.
Mine also looks like it's.
Did it just split? Is it back, or is it?
Are we
back?
Are we back? Are
I
we?
think you're back.
Oh, we're back.
We're back. Oh, good. Sorry, folks. Can anyone?
MIT internet, am I right?
MIT.
Hey. So you can keep going if you
Keep
want.
going.
Yeah.
All right. Basically, what I'll really quickly, just in case anyone missed what I was just talking about, is that all of each of these has a bunch of resources around one activity. So if you click on it, it'll have the video tutorial, the coding cards, and also the educator guide. Okay, great. Here we're back. So yeah, cool. And that also, like in the question and answer segment, if you missed any of that, you can ask us and we can show you again. So just cruising down the ideas page. Right here, this is just a link to download all of the coding cards. There are 11 sets in total, 11 themes. Virtual Pet is one I mentioned, Pong game, Animate Your Name. So anyway, you can just download all of them right there. Here is a link to our starter projects, which is a feature I really love. I'll just quickly show it to you all. Starter projects I feel can be really good for when someone is excited or a student wants to go deeper into Scratch, or maybe like it says like I'm bored, or getting ideas for building larger projects. Starter projects are just like designed to be very generative, very easy to tinker with or take in a lot of directions, and they'll just sort of give you the beginning of something. So this is a maze game, and it's just gonna give you like the very basics of a maze. You can walk your character around and it can't go through blue, and you try to get to the green. And there's tons of things like that in tons of kinds of starter projects. Yeah, I really love those. I also wanted to talk a bit about the extensions that we support in Scratch. Scratch 3, one of the great things is we support hardware extension, a bunch of hardware extensions, and they're really easy to find. So I will just close this video. Fun fact, that's my voice in this video, but goodbye to me for now. So down here at this bottom left corner of the screen, this square button is going to be the add an extension button. So, sorry, I'm seeing a question. Are these resources available in Spanish? So the coding cards have been translated into Spanish. I actually just proofread them. And they are, if you have your language set to Spanish in Scratch, you can open the coding cards in Spanish. The educator guides are not translated. And if you want to translate that, we'll put this in the chat, but you should email translate@scratch.mit.edu. Sorry to go on that different.
Wow, that was impressive. No.
Yeah.
Keep doing that.
So yeah, anyway, love these resources. Yeah, down here, don't want to speed through this too fast. This is the extensions button. If you click on it, it will take you to all of the extensions we have. These up top are just software extensions, so those should be built into most computers. Video sensing uses the webcam, music and pen. This just plays music from the computer. Pen just draws with your sprites. And then down here we have our hardware extensions. So we've got Makey Makey, we've got Microbit, and we've got several Lego ones, and we've got Vernier physics sensors. So if you let's say you want to do Microbit, we have a Microbit, you can click on the extension, and then this is very key. Right now I don't have a Microbit, so I'm not going to connect, but up here, not a lot of people know about this. Up here where it says help for any of our extensions, our hardware extensions, if you click on help, it will take you to a page about that extension. And this page has everything from instructions on how to set it up, you have to install this program called Scratch Link and have that running and have Bluetooth on to connect to any of these hardware. And it's got instructions for connecting, getting it set up, getting it connected to Scratch, and then it has just some first things to try with whatever hardware extension that is, and then 3 starter projects designed by us that can just get you going with that extension. So I will show you that all again really quickly. It is just, if you want to open an extension, go down here to the square button in the bottom left, and then you've got all of your extensions. The ones at the bottom are the hardware ones. So you would if I wanted Microbit, you just click on it. Here it would be where you would connect to it. But you can also click on help to go to the landing page about that extension. And in this document, we have a list of all of the landing pages that we have.
Right, so those are just for the hardware extensions. One other thing to mention, because we get questions about different hardware and do we support them, just like the tutorials library, the extensions library is also growing over time. So even if we don't have an extension right now for a certain piece of hardware, it could be something that we'll support in the future. We may not be able to tell you specifically what those things are right now, but feel free to ask about specific things in the chat.
Cool. Thanks. We've covered a lot. I'm going to jump in and talk a bit about the Scratch online community. Let me jump over to a tab that has Scratch in it. Oh, that's Scratch in practice. That's a preview of what's going to come. So you might be thinking, if you're an educator, like, how might I connect my students to the online community? Is it worth it? What's available? And there's the short answer is yes. I mean, there's so many things to do in the online community. I want to highlight maybe 3 things that I think are nice resources. The first one is the Scratch Design Studio. So if you're not familiar with the Scratch Design Studio, you can find it on the homepage. So if you scroll on the homepage, you'll see featured projects, featured studios, projects curated by, and you see Scratch Design Studio. Now, if you're not familiar, this is a thematic studio that changes every month or 2. You see this month is Puzzled. So let's go ahead and cruise into the studio, visit studio. So this monthly theme is Puzzled. So this is projects created around the idea of like a puzzle. To give you a sense of some other activities that we've had in the past, like in the year 3000, Summer Olympics, monochromatic projects. So a lot of really cool, very open-ended, exciting themes. And I should mention that this is wonderful for newcomers. So folks that are completely new to Scratch, this is a great way to engage with an activity that has, as we mentioned, a low floor and wide walls. And also, if you're more experienced, it does kind of have a high ceiling. So you can go ahead and participate if you are more familiar with Scratch. And so aside from being just a fun, generative project prompt, I would say this is a way you can connect with other Scratchers. So this is one of the more like active, if you want to call it like living, breathing parts of the site, is this studio. And so if you share a project in this studio, it'll float to the top, and it's oftentimes you'll get a comment, things like that. And so it's a great way to sort of get your feet wet in the online community. I would highly encourage it. And it's supported by Scratchers who are adding these projects called Scratch Design Studio Curators. So this is really run by the community, for the community, with some help from the Scratch team. So again, that's the Scratch Design Studio. It's really, really exciting part of the Scratch online community. So 2 other things that I want to highlight are going to happen in the search bar. So you might be asking, we just shared a couple cool activities, but if you want to find a tutorial, one thing that Scratch, the millions of Scratchers that I've seen in the online community, is it's a community that wants to share their learning. And so there are tens of thousands of tutorials. So if you type in tutorial in the search bar, it is just mind-numbing how many there are. And you might be surprised what you'll find too, because it's not only tutorials on how it is you might code something, it's also artwork too, how you might draw in vector, or what is bitmap, things like that. And so it's worth looking through here, even if you don't have a specific question in your mind, just to kind of browse and see what sort of piques your interest and check those out. Like how to draw hair, how to do a block shade, how to paint an ocean, velocity. There's just so much here, and it's so rich. And this is, again, created by Scratchers, and it's so wonderful to see. When you're on the search page, what it's going to do, it's going to show you the projects. You might also think to look at the studios with that title, and you'll see here it's going to sort of surface the more active studios. So you might be surprised. So someone might have already sort of curated some of their favorite tutorials in a studio. So that's the one that I wanted to show you. Then here's another one that I think is maybe lesser known, but one of my favorite things, and that's this concept of an engine. So I will type that in.
This is awesome.
Okay. So you can think of this almost like a tutorial. The idea is the engine is going to have like the base bare bones code that might run a certain type of project. So for instance, we see this one's like underwater. So if you want like the physics of underwater, that's going to be in this project. I'm going to search platform engine because I love platform games. And when I'm making a platform game, I'm like, geez, I kind of want to remix off of someone's code, because maybe that's going to get me going quicker. And that's kind of how I want to start my project. So we'll just click one here. You see there's dozens. I'll pick this one. And one thing you'll see in engine projects, it's not only just the code that is very simple. It's also, if you see inside, oftentimes folks will comment the code. So you're kind of not going in blind. It's like, hey, when you open up a project, there's notes, there's directions. So we'll click this here. So it looks like they commented here. So this is checks if you are pressing the left arrow. That's what this does. This sets the X velocity. And so it's just really wonderful to see people not only creating the code, but also kind of inviting you to sort of make sense of it and to tweak it. And so again, I want to say there's thousands, maybe tens of thousands of engines out there that I find are just remarkably useful jumping off points. Again, all of what we showed you is sort of created by Scratchers for Scratchers. So if you're watching now, I would invite you to make a tutorial, make an engine project, contribute to the Scratch Design Studio. It's really like the richness comes from all the participants. So anyways, those are just 3 things. I can go on for a long time talking about the online community. 3 things that I think you should check out with your students.
Cool. Yeah, I'm going to jump in and talk to you a little bit about the offline editor, which you could find by, so I'm at the Scratch website, and if I just go to scratch.mit.edu/download, it'll take me to a page that tells you everything you need to know about the Scratch desktop editor. So if you're in a classroom and you don't have great internet, or wherever you are, if you don't have consistent internet access, you can download the Scratch desktop editor. And actually, you will still, it looks pretty much the same as Scratch. You actually can access all the tutorials, which is really wonderful, offline. So the only main difference is that when you're working on a project, like any other desktop application, you need to save to your desktop and then reopen it in order to continue working on it. But this page, just to scroll down a little bit, shows you everything you need to know to install it and kind of get up and running. Also, one other thing that's useful to know is if you're working on much older devices, you can actually download the Scratch 2.0 and 1.4 desktop editors and use the older version of Scratch. So if there's any reason why you can't run 3.0, you can always kind of have that as a fallback. But yeah, I think that's
cool. So this has been like a blitz of information here with Scratch, the community, Scratch resources. We wanted to talk a bit about sort of next steps and connecting with other educators who might be using Scratch. And so I guess I'll take the lead. I wanted to share with folks this initiative we have called Scratch in Practice. You can visit the site at sip.scratch.mit.edu. And Scratch in Practice is essentially sort of a monthly series where we highlight strategies and stories from educators that are using Scratch in their practice. And each month has a theme. And so if you're on the Scratch, and if you're on the SIP website, you can view the past themes. So maybe that's where I'll start. We'll view some past themes. So for instance, in May, we talked about peer learning. So let's go check out what that looked like. That's me. So I'm going to cruise through the page and just kind of show you what some of the parts of each month look like. So this month, we were talking about peer learning. So Mitch has his Minute with Mitch, where he talks for about 2 minutes, which is kind of a bit longer than a minute. We're working on that, where he talks kind of broadly about like the philosophical sort of underpinnings of Scratch and creative learning, in this case, focusing on peer learning. So it's a great 2-minute video to sort of get a high-level overview of the month. And then every month we have, well, so far we've had a resource. So the Pass It On activity is a great activity that you could run in your classroom that sort of really highlights peer learning. So you make a project, then you pass it to your neighbor and they work on it. So again, every month we'll have some type of thing you can do, some activity you can run in your classroom. Then Natalie Rusk writes these really beautiful, informative articles, which digs into the month, the theme of the month. So this one is talking about scaffolding peer learning. And then we'll toss in some other resources too. So this month we highlighted Scratch Educator meetups, which are run by educators around the world that are sort of who are connecting with Scratch Ed, who help set them up and facilitate these workshops. And then finally, getting to SIP tips, which is sort of the educator voices, which we really want to highlight, where educators are sharing content around that theme of the month. And so, yeah, so we also host Twitter chats. We're doing a webinar. This webinar that you're watching right now is part of SIP. So if you didn't know about SIP, you're actually in it right now. And so we're going to start up again. So the summer, we had sort of a summer of Scratch 3-month sort of, I don't want to say sabbatical, but we traveled. We traveled for the past 3 months, so we sort of haven't had monthly themes. Instead, we were going around the world sort of meeting educators. But in September, we're going to launch a new theme. So we're working hard on that. And so, yeah, so we encourage people to continue checking out SIP.scratchlearning.edu.
Awesome. I'm going to share a little bit about another awesome educator resource that isn't exactly or not solely focused on Scratch, but complements Scratch very well. And that's Learning Creative Learning. Learning Creative Learning is a free online course that lasts 6 weeks. And it focuses on bringing creativity into your classroom. So if that's something you're interested in as an educator, you can participate in video meetings, forum discussions, hands-on activities, and exchange facilitation ideas with other educators. One thing that really gets me excited about Learning Creative Learning is that it truly is an international community. If you scroll down on the website, you can see the map of people participating in Learning Creative Learning around the world. So it's a really beautiful collaborative course where individuals are learning from each other on a global scale. Also, we have Lily in the room who works on Learning Creative Learning. I don't know, Lily, do you have anything you'd like to add to this? Sorry, put you on the spot. Sure. And you're not on camera.
You're not on camera yet.
We're screen sharing.
We could stop screen
Sure.
sharing.
So we actually will be offering the course again this fall. So you can join anytime and see the materials now, but we do have times when people take the course together, and we'll be doing that this October. So stay tuned for more information on that course.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Lily.
You know what we should probably mention? We should probably mention these are also free.
Yes, this is free.
Scratch and Practice is free. Learning Creative Learning is free. As Zoe mentioned, the resources that you can get on the Scratch website are free. And also, we should probably mention that a lot of these are localized and translated from folks who are kind enough to spend their time localizing these resources. So yeah, I think that's probably important to mention about everything that you just heard about.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, we're not trying to sell you anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I know we have what's next for resources.
What is next for resources? That's a thing? I didn't know this was a thing.
Oh, it was, you know what? I think that was on the list.
Dun, dun, dun. Should we,
Now that's for you to ask. Yeah.
What is next with resources?
29, so we're at our halfway point almost exactly.
Maybe,
yeah, I don't know. Are we ready to start answering questions?
Yeah, let's get into those questions.
Stop screen sharing.
Yeah.
We're still in this room.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, hello.
Hello again.
To those who just joined, we're now we've been talking about our Scratch learning resources, and now we're gonna take questions you have about teaching with Scratch. And
so this is where Lily makes an entrance.
Yes.
Lily has been fielding the questions
Hello.
for us, so she'll be passing along all your great questions.
Great. Thank you so much to all of you who have been sending in questions, and we put a link in the chat if you want to send in more via Google Forms, or you can just type in YouTube chat. So thank you so much for all of you who sent them in. There's one that we get a lot. So how do you support students who are maybe already familiar with Scratch, but they want to go beyond what they've already tried?
Yeah, I was going to say, and Eric
Good question.
spoke a lot about the Scratch online community. I think that sometimes it can be intimidating because there's so much content there. But I think Eric gave us some really wonderful strategies on like using the search bar to search for things and looking for engines and stuff like that. I think getting involved in the Scratch community is a great way for kids to really kind of be able to go at their own pace and push beyond what you might be doing with the rest of your students, because they can, remix. I think we didn't really touch on remixing that much, but that's such a huge part of the Scratch community, is that when you look at someone else's project, there's a remix button, which allows you to see their code and remix it and create your own version. So that's how those engines and other things work. So I think you can learn a lot by remixing.
Yeah, that's great.
The list of Scratch design studios, you can like Google it and get the list of all the Scratch design studios we've had. And anyway, so that's that can be good for like, there's just a lot of good prompts in there that are sort of meant to inspire. So like make your own restaurant and like bounce and all these other things.
Yeah, and if I'm ever concerned about like a student kind of getting lost and not being able to find something, if I know kind of what they're interested in or chat with them about that, I'll oftentimes like look for things and send them a few links and connect them with stuff I think that will get them going on the right path without being overwhelmed by the kind of wealth of choices in the Scratch community, which is totally amazing.
And a little bit of inspiration, showing them maybe like a project that someone made that's kind of like an animated music video. Someone just made a featured project that's like a Scratch anime opening that's so cool. So it's like, yeah, just a little bit of that.
This is sort of a related question. So someone asked, do you usually recommend, in terms of the engine projects, like just the best of the best engine projects? And I'm curious about how you think about sharing examples and which ones you pick.
Yeah, I mean, so certainly the amount of commenting I think is important in an engine project. So I think I will sort of favor ones that have the code commented. I think there's also sort of the simplicity of the code. So I will also tend to favor ones that like I can parse and understand. But I mean, that's just kind of I'm trying to think again of that like low floor, like what I would want to pass along to a classroom. And so I tend to lean towards, I think, heavily commented and like simple scripts. But certainly there's ones where it's like 3D engines where you're like scratching your head and you're like, oh man, I don't quite understand that. But I think the level of complexity needs to be there. And sometimes the commenting on it, like I can't make sense of, but maybe that's just because my mind doesn't work that way. So so to answer your question, is like heavily commented and simple scripts. And yeah, you could also, if you want, if you find one you like, you could remix it, simplify it, or just add comments too. And I think that'd be totally cool as well. Yeah. Yeah.
And related in terms of like providing these kinds of supports or examples, someone asked about tutorials. Like they asked, do you have an overview of tutorials, like what's included in something that gives a rough age that you recommend for different tutorials?
Like our activity?
Yeah, I mean, I think we don't provide recommended ages, and I think that there's a good reason for that, is that people have such a broad range of exposure to computers and coding at such various different ages. It really, I feel like, isn't necessarily something. I think it'd be more misleading if we were like, this is a great project for like a 13-year-old. Everybody learns at their own pace and has their own interests. So I think that's not necessarily something we do. At least as far as age goes.
That said, I do think like animated name is a great intro activity. It introduces like a lot of very simple concepts, like if the event block, when you click a sprite, it introduces color effects. It introduces moving with arrow keys, I think. Yeah, so like I think actually we might have like front loaded in the library, the first couple are like kind of better for first time users.
And similarly within the coding cards, the ones that are like animated name that we think of as being better for beginners, like animated name, I think make music is pretty close to the beginning of the coding cards also. And then the ones like virtual pet, which introduces several variables and like communication between sprites, and catch game, which also has, maybe more trip up points, like are sort of towards the end of the coding cards.
But I think it's also safe to say that we designed them to hopefully be for all ages. But I just do think maybe there's a slight preference to like animated name or some of the first couple for newcomers. Yeah.
Great. We also have some questions about teacher and student accounts. Someone's asking, are there any future plans for the accounts? And someone else is asking if you can create an account without working for a school that will manage other accounts.
I'm actually not sure about that.
So the second one, I think you could send that question to help@scratch.mit.edu and they'd be able to answer it, because I'm not sure.
I think if you're running like a library program or like a summer camp, you shouldn't have to worry about whether or not you can create it. So
if you're working as an educator in any kind of setting,
do it. I mean, you should do it. So I guess we do have a question.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking more like in the extreme of like, I'm just hanging out at home using Scratch for myself.
No, probably not. Probably wouldn't be good.
And then in terms of teacher accounts, it's something that I think we're that would be great for us to hear your feedback on about what works with it, what doesn't. And we have a survey, which maybe we can put the link to the survey for Scratch feedback for things you would like to see more of, what works, what doesn't, and stuff like that. So yes, put that in the survey.
In the chat, we'll have a survey that you can drop. So that's like we're in information gathering stage for Educator accounts.
Yeah. Great. Rebecca is asking about how to support sustaining students' interest to delve deeper and not just play their games that they've made. And is there a way to turn off at times shared projects? I don't know if that means playing other people's projects or
like turn off
project.
Yeah. There isn't. You could use the offline editor.
You could, yeah. I mean, I think one thing that I think, it's great that Scratch is so engaging that like kids are so proud of their projects. And I know it's kind of addictive. It's like when you're designing a website or something, like you want to like experience the thing that you're creating. But I get that sometimes you're like, okay, we played with it now. What could we do with it next? It can be challenging, especially when you're doing creative projects and you have a whole bunch of students who are all kind of pursuing their own thing, which is wonderful. A lot of times I'll work with kids to set benchmarks for themselves of like what's the next goal beyond that are unique to their project. And I find that really motivating. I think having process critiques with a group of kids where they're sharing and talking about their projects is really great because they start learning from each other and getting new ideas and things they get excited about adding to their projects. So I think that's a constructive way of saying, instead of like stop doing that, or instead of playing with your game, add to it, is to more like inspire them to, think beyond what they've already done to what they could do next.
Yeah. There's also this, let's think about adding a new feature. Again, you might look at like, let's do a cloud high score list or something like that. There's also this idea of like, sometimes we have like the hack the controller. So it's like use an extension like Makey to make a controller as big as the room, or play the game without using your keyboard and use video sensing. So there's a lot of ways you can kind of introduce fun, kind of playful prompts to continue working.
Yeah, prompts are really great. And I know like when you go to a game jam and you're making a game, they'll often have like diversifiers, which are extra things that you can include in your game. You could have like a bucket in your classroom full of a bunch of different things that they could pull that are kind of random and fun. That could be, whether it could be like adding variables, or it could be like, kind of surreal, weird prompts that are just in there for them to add to their projects. So those are also helpful.
We have one more thing too is, I guess when I think about Scratch, I think about like the coding, but it's also about like the story that's being told and the sounds and the artwork. And so again, we checked out some of the tutorials earlier where it's like pen shading and 8-bit art and things like that. And so in the realm of like adding to your project, thinking about those other components too, not just the code. And like there's infinite amount of time that you can spend trying to like learn new art concepts, or recording your own sounds, or drawing and importing your sprites, things like that. So thinking like holistically about the project is something that I try to sort of focus on. Yeah.
Nice. This is a question we get a lot. Is there a curriculum for Scratch?
Yes, there is. So Scratch Ed at the Harvard Graduate School of Education has just launched a new site for the Creative Curriculum, or Creative Computing Curriculum Guide. So do we want to call? I had that window open last time we did this webinar. I didn't remember to do it this time. But yeah, so their website.
Whoa,
don't mind me. You can keep going. You can go. I'll find it.
So yeah, I don't think it's linked here. I think you have to go start typing it into the
Okay.
And actually what's wonderful about that curriculum guide is that it even includes stuff like brainstorming sheets and other things like that. So like every kind of resource you can imagine for enacting Scratch creatively in your classroom. So I highly recommend looking at this website as well.
creativecomputing.gsc. If you type in Google Creative Computing Guide, it'll be the first. That's great. I can't say enough about the curriculum guide.
Yeah. So that's definitely the place that I would recommend to start if you're looking for a curriculum.
Yeah. Great. Here's a question about the Scratch conference. Someone's asking, will there be a Scratch conference in the US this year?
No.
No, it will be in Cambridge, UK. The United
Not
Kingdom.
Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Not Cambridge, Massachusetts.
UK. This year.
This year. In like a month.
In the past, I hope this is right. The even numbered years, it's at MIT, or it's been at MIT, and the odd number years, it's hosted elsewhere around the world. And in fact, there was like a Scratch conference this year in Chile.
Yeah, there's other ones.
There's going to be one in Europe. So next year, 2020.
Yeah, so 2020, it will be back here in the US.
In the US, I think MIT, but in the US.
Yeah. So yes.
Don't book your tickets yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no reason why it wouldn't be. Yes. Just don't know the dates yet.
We don't know the dates yet. Yeah, of next year's.
Yeah. Great. This is the thing where you can't say anything like, "No, you don't want to take anything back." You want
right, exactly.
But
yeah.
Great. And we have some people who are asking about different kinds of like connections to hardware. I know you already spoke to this. People ask about Hummingbird. People ask about Arduino. I don't know if you want to say any more about what we do have available.
Yeah, I mean, we looked at the library earlier, so we have like 3 different Lego extensions, Makey, Vernier, and Microbit. I think one of the things that we look at when we decide which things to put the time into supporting right away is how many people are using them, because we want to support those things as quickly as we can. So yeah, that's I would say that's like the one kind of overall comment I would make about what things we have on their way.
So I think if you want one, then like write into help@scratch.mit.edu or write into our survey, like let us know. And when new extensions are added, we always post about it on Twitter.
Yes.
There's also documentation if you're feeling like, oh man, I would like to write my own extension for this. There's documentation. If you search Scratch 3.0 extension documentation, there's just an outline of how it is you might go about doing that. Yeah.
And another question about kind of hardware, is ScratchLink available for Chromebooks? When will it be? Other questions.
Well, geez, so we're working on Chrome OS.
Yeah.
So we're working on a version of Scratch that will work like as an app. I think they call it
a native app.
A native app.
This is what they tech people say.
Yeah, so that's coming sooner rather than later.
I think by the end of the year, or like within the next year.
Yeah, I would say stay tuned for that. And what's gonna so to answer the question, I believe, if I'm saying this correctly, when you have the Chrome OS app, you won't need ScratchLink.
Right.
It'll work. So on your Chromebook, you could be using extensions. That's huge news.
Yeah.
That's the headline of this.
Yeah.
So
read all about it.
Yeah. So
I do that 9 times out of 10 when my extension is not working. It's because I forgot to run ScratchLink before trying to use it.
Yeah. For me, it's like 10 times.
I was playtesting it. I was actually playtesting today.
Right. Yeah.
Of the Chrome OS app. It's really nice.
Yeah.
Someone, Blair is asking about teacher training, asking about, is there a progression you use to train teachers? Is there anything you'd like to share in terms of strategies for professional development?
Sure. I mean, I know professional development is something we're starting to think of more on the Scratch team. Definitely for myself, like I started learning Scratch as an educator, and there are some wonderful online resources. But I would honestly say, like, if you're, interested in learning how to use Scratch as an educator, experience, and this is true for anything, like try and experience it the same way your students would, and actually like give yourself the time to like crack open the animate a name tutorial and actually do the tutorial. I think that's one of the most important things to like kind of understand the experience that your student's going to have coming to Scratch for the first time. And there are other, like, I don't necessarily know that there's like one in specific, that I'd plug here, but there are online courses for how to, like, just for Scratch that are created by like other MIT affiliated people that are online. And that's actually something I did when I was like trying to learn Scratch in my classroom. That, and then there's the curriculum guide for once you get to the point where you're ready to really start thinking about how you incorporate it with your classroom. And then there's also Scratch in Practice, which is, theme-based, and we're tackling things like peer learning and engaging student interest through Scratch and things like that. So it depends on how structured an experience you want. I do think, Scratch and Practice is really doing a good job of supporting educators, and we're, continuously working on that. So yeah, I'm not sure if that question was more focused on like learning it so you can teach it or learning how to teach it. But,
And that's a good question.
Yeah, I think that's great. And actually, someone in the chat is pointing out that there's also the Scratch Ed meetups,
Yes.
Which are a great opportunity to be in person with other teachers who are using Scratch. Those are organized by the Harvard Graduate School of Education and educators. So definitely would recommend checking out their website too and see if it's something near you that you can join.
Yeah, we'll put the link to that in the chat.
And if there isn't something near you, there's also information on how to start your own Scratch Ed meetup. So you could be the person that initiates that and builds a wonderful community of educators if there isn't one already in your area.
This is kind of a technical question about uploading Flash animations to Scratch or using yeah, I don't know if we want to answer that here. Maybe we could talk about how you can ask technical questions if you do have one for Scratch.
Sure, and
That's good.
But and that one I can answer quickly to my the best of my knowledge. I could be wrong, and if someone has a better way,
we're making all this up.
But I think the way I would do it is find something like that will where you can screen capture and make a GIF out of it. Because Scratch just in the last few months. 3.0 now has GIF upload, so you can if you upload on a GIF, it will upload those all as the costumes of a sprite. So I think that would be the way.
Yeah, for animation,
I think that would be the way. And if you wanted to get into, if you had the ability to, I think that's the way. I think that is the best way I know how to do it. But yes, technical questions.
Yeah. So in general, if something's going wrong in Scratch. Yeah, where do you go if you have a problem or a bug or you're not sure how to figure
Should we screen share? And
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah. So let's tackle this. If you have a tech question, we have a solution for you. So I'm going to screen share. We not the people in this room. But, so I'm screen sharing. Sometimes we do. Yes, we're full of knowledge. So tech questions. One of the most underutilized parts of the Scratch website is the footer. There's so many amazing links in the footer.
There is so much in the footer.
There's a lot of great stuff in the footer. I would highly recommend it. That's my fourth tip about the community is the footer. So the Contact Us button is in the middle of the page under Support. So we'll click that. And this is I'm just going to jump to where you can ask a question. So down here,
Are we sharing the correct? Oh no, it's just behind. I'm sorry.
Okay, cool.
It looked like we weren't sharing the same window.
Sure. Yeah. So you're on the Contact Us page. You can pick sort of the sort of subject of it. It's reporting something inappropriate, problem with the website, probably email confirmation or other. So you can put other. Give your email address, subject line, and when you hit send, it will send us an email. And then that email is read from a person on the development team, the developers, and a person from the community team. And so you'll be able to get an answer to your technical question there. Also, I point on this page, there's also links to questions about Scratch. So like the frequently asked questions, rather that's up here, frequently asked questions. So you might find that your question's already been answered. And then these three links link to our discussion forums. And the discussion forums, we'll just like say you have a problem with your project and your sprite isn't bouncing the way you think, and you think it might be because your code is wrong. You might go to the Help with Scripts forum and you can create a post in here and you can say, I'm having a problem with my project. Here's the link. Why isn't it working? And this incredibly active, incredibly helpful forum can give you a response. So
people are so helpful.
I will just,
You'll get responses with it.
Yeah.
So here's one. I'm just going to click one at random. I just don't quite get how to make a grid with more than 300 tiles. And then it looks like people are giving them feedback here. So tech questions, contact us. Bugs in your code that you don't think are working, it's your fault. Maybe try to Help with Scripts forum. Yeah.
Woo, infinite.
I have used the Help with Scripts forums many a time.
Yeah.
Bob is asking, do you encourage students to use those resources too, those forums?
I think it depends on where they're at in their like Scratch journey. You know what I mean? If they're, and even maybe even like how personally, if you know them to be someone who feels comfortable doing that sort of thing independently, absolutely.
Yeah.
If I were working with a student who was a little bit more timid or was just getting started with Scratch, I might ask the question for them myself in the forum if I don't know the answer, and kind of help them seek that out. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd maybe be fun for 30 seconds just to show you the forums really quick. And so again, there's a number of different topics. So help with scripts. There's a show and tell forum where if you have a cool project and you want to share it with people, you can share it here. Again, you see there's dozens of posts here per day. If you're looking for someone to collaborate with, you can post sort of your request of what you want to work on together. If you have requests like, oh gosh, can someone help me voice act on my thing? And so again, there's thousands of posts in these forums. So definitely check those out. And I think the discussion forums are great. I also think you might check out some of the featured studios as well. If you're kind of looking for community for your students, there's always a nice variety of very, very active studios on Scratch, and it's fun to sort of contribute to these studios and get to know folks in the studios. So if you're kind of looking for community, I would definitely leverage that with your students.
Great. Okay. Yeah, and we just wanted to clarify. So the contact us feature is for if you have a technical bug, but not really for debugging your script.
Yeah, no, I think I'm sorry, but if you're debugging your scripts, we might send you a message saying like, hey, check out that, check out the help with scripts forum. But or if your intuition is it's like the Scratch editor's fault, then definitely send it over. Yeah.
Speaking of bugs, someone else is asking about, Rebecca's thinking about making some kind of project where kids open up a project with a bug and have to figure out the problem. And is just wondering if there are examples of that already available.
Yeah.
There probably are.
Yeah. Is it okay if I answer it? Sorry, I've been
No. You know so many good things.
Yeah, so the Scratch Ed team has had a history of using what they call Debug It projects. And I'm going to screen share again, and I'm going to cross my fingers and hope when I search debug in here, debug activity, hit enter. Yeah, so there's a bunch of sort of debug it activities that are shared. So one is three snowmen don't go upside down. Anyways, there's a number of I want to say there's actually a resource that was put out by Scratch Ed that has a lot of the Debug It projects.
Does Getting Unstuck link to those? And I think we should mention Getting Unstuck also.
Yeah.
It'd be great to share that, which is another great resource for
So
educators.
this is a really good question, and it's vaguely in the back of my mind where it is you can access these. So maybe actually in the next couple of minutes, I will look on my phone to try to find a link and link it to you.
Nice. We can also post it in the description for this video, which will exist as a video on demand after the stream ends. So you can rewatch this.
I found it.
Ah!
I found it.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so
Debug
it's debug space it. Debug space it, and the Scratch team has shared their Debug It activities. And certainly this is one way in which, if you want to poke around with code, one way you can approach that. I do find that sometimes sort of the more open-ended activities I think are a bit better for sort of getting folks started with Scratch, but I find that these are enjoyable sort of puzzling kind of projects to dig into. So cool, I'm glad that that worked.
That was some skills.
This is a question back in the physical world. Is there any way to get Scratch posters or t-shirts or other kinds of things for my computer science club?
Well, there is the Scratch store, right? There's not a poster there yet. But one has been designed by the amazing design team. I helped a little. I'm not going to take credit for it. And God, there's not one in this room right now. But we're actually chatting with printers now to work on getting them printed. So that's something in the future. One thing I think we've tried to be careful about producing things for the, or I guess being kind of environmentally friendly. and not put more waste out into the world. So I think we've been really careful about what kinds of things we were willing to sell in the Scratch store. But there is an official Scratch store,
and you can get T-shirts and stickers right now.
Screen share.
Yeah, I just figured I'd look it up first and make sure that I can find it.
Yep.
Oh yeah. Okay. So if we screen share. Yes. So here we are in the official Scratch store, and you can see that actually this is the old version of the coding cards that are sold out. You can buy the 3.0 coding cards on Amazon right now, and we have T-shirts, Midge's book, some other stuff, and some other coding cards. So there is stuff in here. We're actually soon to be released is a low ink poster. So that's like a printable poster for teachers that they can print and personalize on colored paper or white paper. That would be totally free that you can just download and print. So that's something we'll be sharing on social, I think, super soon.
That's probably important to mention too, that not all the swag, the cool stuff is just in the store.
Right, yeah, you don't have to, there's a lot of things that you don't have to buy, so.
This poster, I should stop talking. It's like, wow. It's yeah. I want it framed in my house.
Yes, so a bigger poster is coming soon, but then I think maybe even by the end of the week via social media that like print poster you can print yourself.
No way, really?
Yes.
Breaking all sorts of news.
Oh my gosh.
What other news can we break? Chrome OS poster?
In the next 3 minutes?
Part of me is like, should I not have said anything?
No, sorry.
No.
You can retract, say, there's going to be a poster soon.
Poster? What poster?
What
yeah.
poster?
Yeah. Great. Well, we only have a few minutes left. Are there any last tips, thoughts, pieces of advice you'd like to share before we wrap up? No, it's been like information overload.
My one tip for educators would be that, like, if you're super new to Scratch and you're hesitant about doing it in your classroom, you're nervous because it's something completely new to you, I would say, like, have no fear. I know that the first time I introduced Scratch, I did it with Makey at the same time, and I had not done either. And I was not prepared at all. I think my Makey had arrived on my doorstep late at night. Like, I ordered it online. And when I left my house at like 4:30 in the morning, as teachers do, it was like on my welcome mat. So I grabbed it, showed up in my classroom, and I think I opened the Makey like right before my class came in, opened Scratch, and just like, we did an amazing Makey exercise where we like created a switch by holding hands and turned things on and off. And I was just so amazed by how excited, like I was an art teacher. There were kids who were maybe not super engaged in art making, that they were all of a sudden like knew everything about electricity and wanted to teach everybody else. Or kids that were already coding at home that I didn't know about that were excited to share that. And then also really artsy, creative kids who were maybe didn't consider themselves someone who would ever be interested in coding, who got really, really into Scratch. So I would say if you're here because you're super new and you're nervous about doing it, like jump in, it will be amazing.
Yeah.
Do you want to try to top that?
No, there's no way.
No.
You're amazing. Teachers are amazing. Yeah. Oh, I guess just like, thinking about getting students to go deeper with things. Like passion is fuel. Like when you love something, you're gonna figure out whatever you have to do to make that project happen. I mean, you all know this, like, but yeah, that is just a powerful thing, I think.
I just want to thank you for spending time with us. I hope it was helpful. We have that SIP survey. Maybe we could send that off again, the link to that. Yep. Because we would love to know if things like this are helpful and what we can do to help sort of get you inspired to be using Scratch with your students.
Yeah, and then we'll have the link to this. Well, maybe we'll also put the link to this presentation.
The beautiful slides with all that info.
Also
can be yours. So, anyways, it's 8 o'clock, so we'll let everyone go.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Scratch on.
Scratch on.
Woo.